Hello, everyone. Welcome to no, I said Wild Card Wednesday. Tabletop Tuesday. My week is fucked. I apologize. As I choke on my lungs here. Alright, so welcome to Tabletop Tuesday. We're going to be discussing some tabletop stuff. If you haven't noticed the title, it is we're using psychology and tropes as a DM. Basically, how to pretty much manipulate your players into doing what you want them to do, which is always fun. But before we get into that, let's talk about some sponsors first. Excuse me while I hack up some phlegm here. God damn. Apologies. I fixed the chat, by the way. You can chat now. It's no longer sub only. So, hurrah. So, sponsor number one is our Shockbite Gaming servers. There's a link down below. So that helps us out. Sponsor number two is HelloFresh. We talked about them yesterday, and we're going to talk about them more tomorrow. They ask for a day off between the two, but I'm still leaving the code up, just in case anyone ever wants to use that for the 16 free meals and all that other fun jazz. We're also trying to help our artists, so by all means, there's the link over there to the artist. I wonder if I could flip my camera to the other side, so that way it's not dumb. Let's see if I can do that. Video format. There's flip vertically. I wish there was flip horizontally. Okay. I have to deal with pointing to my left when I want to point right, and pointing to my right when I want to point left. That's always fun. Alright, so that's our two artists that we're trying to help. So there is that. Now let's bring in our course partner in crime for the foreseeable future when it comes to Tabletop Tuesday, CandidGamera.
Oh, hello.
Eventually we're going to have other people talking on this, you know that.
Of course.
You know who I'd love to get on this at least once?
Mike?
Mike. Because let's be brutally honest. Mike knows casters, you know rogues, and I know the melee hitters.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be where we fell into our specialty, even though in 3.5, I was always the fucking rogue. But, like, ever since I started playing Pathfinder and 5th Ed, I've been the melee guy. I've been the big, heavy, I'm going to beat the shit out of you person.
Right.
So it's always fun like that. It's just like, wait a minute, what the hell?
But yeah, Mike would totally be fun to get on here. I'm still trying to get him into a tabletop game. Offered him a spot in the Call of Cthulhu game that I'm running, and he's very interested, but he keeps having stuff come up. So
yeah, always.
That's Mike.
Yeah, that's Mike. I love the dude to death. He's pretty much a sibling now because the way my family adopted him. But goddamn, is he flaky sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's not always his fault either. He just gets wrapped up in so much shit that he ends up not being able to stick it out.
Yeah, and scheduling can be hard as adults. We have so much going on.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I know he's got some chronic health issues, so occasionally he'll have a migraine day. But yeah, trying to think what it was. He had. Oh, I remember because when we was going to start the Cthulhu game, Pride. He was up at Pride in Pittsburgh. So
nice.
And yeah, it's like, oh, he's not going to be back in time. Yeah, I totally understand that.
Oh no, that's a-okay, man. Fuck, man, I get that. Shit, dude. All right, so we are going. Let's see. Can I do my display capture? Excellent. I feel like I should be reversing this though. Oh shit! I turned myself off. Alright. Yeah, we'll do Stars gameplay and just do display capture. Boom. Alright, there we go. Alright. So the thing we're going to be discussing today, folks, is... How do I put this? Using psychological tactics, as well as skills, as well as video game tropes to accomplish some sort of goal in your game. Now, this can be used for good. This can also be used for evil.
I mean, I would go even farther and say that, you know, this is psychological manipulation of your players, but people hear the word manipulation and think bad.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily mean it in the bad sense. It can be bad, but it can also be good. You can also be like teeing up an interesting surprise for your characters.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it is a kind of manipulation because people have expectations and you're working to subvert them.
Yeah. And that's kind of a thing. And we're going to be utilizing certain historical tropes in both tabletop, video games, and movies. Even some movies will basically be in that mindset of your players, especially if they're into a particular series or something. That's a good example. If one sees, like, for example, Star Trek, the Bat'leth, you know that is a weapon that is designed to kill people. So you have that expectation. Also in Star Trek, anybody who tends to use the color blue tends to be more considered good versus reds and greens, which are the not so good colors in Star Trek. At least, you know, traditionally.
I mean, yeah, your sort of your Klingon color palette is very red filtered. Your Romulan color palette is very green filtered.
Borg is green.
Cardassian's kind of like yellow, if I recall correctly.
Yep, they're yellow.
But Federation is very much, you know, kind of blue tinged when they have a color at all. They're kind of like full spectrum usually. But like in games and things, the Federation usually gets blue.
Yeah, a lot of blues. They tend to get blues. Now, there is a brief overview. Krongate released this. It's called the Brief Overview of Color Theory. Alright? So, when we see reds, we always associate that with strong emotions like love, lust, anger, as well as warmth. In video games, red is commonly used for hit points. Like, a great example is the Diablo series, where they have that big, giant red orb that's filled with blood. And that's your health.
Yep.
And we just see red as life. Like, we're almost, as gamers, we're hard-coded for, like, that red color, that vibrant red color, as this is my health pool.
Yeah, it's the color of blood.
Or the health potions, too.
Yeah.
Health potions tend to be red. So we have that in our mind. We're like, hey, you know, this is red, this is supposed to heal me. Huzzah. Orange is joy and enthusiasm, as well as frustration or freshness. In orange, when we see that in games, we tend to see that as a bad guy color or a fire color. Like, if some games do damage, like little numbers that pop up, and they have colors to the numbers, orange tends to be flames. Like, you have taken burn damage. At least that's what makes sense to me. I mean, have you experienced anything other than that for orange?
I'm trying to think. Orange is usually some kind of fire thing.
Yeah. I would say, like, the reason why I say evil is the Destiny franchise heavily uses orange as a bad guy color. Like, a lot of the factions use it for bad.
Well, I mean, going even just a step deeper and kind of cutting ahead to a couple of colors, a lot of supervillains in comic books use secondary colors, orange, green, and purple, especially green and purple.
Oh yeah, green. Oh my god, that's used all the time.
The Green Goblin is kind of the classic example, but even the Hulk, he is not necessarily a hero, he's a force of destruction, and, you know, he ended up with green and purple.
Yeah.
And, you know, your heroes get the primary colors like red, yellow, and blue more often.
Yeah, definitely. Yellow, for instance, let's talk about primary color, is, according to color theory, is happiness or cowardice. And that makes sense. I mean, when you see yellow in games, though, that tends to be electrical or holy damage, I've noticed.
Yeah, electrical, I would say a lot. Holy might be white or yellow, yeah.
Yeah, and when I talk about these colors as well, I'm also talking about if they have spell effects. The spell effects tend to be that color too.
Yeah.
In a lot of games. Not always.
And then sometimes in games with damage that's color coded that isn't typed, you might see yellow, orange, red for like the level of damage. So like a high crit would be red,
Yep.
a lesser damage would be orange. So we also use them as like intensity markers.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Then we talk about green. Green is nature, envy, sickness, or greed. When we talk about sickness, that is definitely diseases, that's acid, that's poison. Basically, green tends to be damage over time effects.
Yes, or, very frequently, tying into that nature aspect there, sometimes your healing numbers are green.
No, that's true. Healing numbers are green, or you take nature damage. When a game has nature as an element, sometimes they'll show up as green. So there is that. Blue is calm, cold, corporate, or masculine. Fun historical fact, blue wasn't a masculine color until the early 1900s.
Yeah.
It was pink.
Yeah.
Pink was the masculine color.
Baby boys were in pink.
Yep. And because it was seen as strong, and it was vibrant, it was bright, so therefore it was masculine. And blue was the woman's color because it was more reserved, more relaxed, more in control of themselves. So there's that. In gaming, blue shows up insanely often for magic. That's like mana, your magical energies. The runes on the floor often are blue. If they have only one color.
Yep.
And that's common. It's everywhere.
Yeah, you may see a pale blue, as you mentioned before the stream, with ice damage, or sometimes with electricity, kind of like the high energy plasma type stuff. Some people will do like pale blue for electricity.
Yep. And of course, blue's water as well. You see water a lot. So there's that. I've seen blue used once for horror. And that was the Subnautica series. Because your background is all blue in various shades. And some of the one of the biggest leviathans in the game, which I'll pull up, the Ghost Leviathan in Subnautica is blue. It's this blue color here. Oh, I'm in the way. Can I open image in a new tab? There we go. Whoop. Here we go. That's the Ghost Leviathan. It's blue. It's got blue with yellow eyes. You can see a little bit of red in it for its organs.
Yeah.
But this little sucker comes out of nowhere and decides that it's going to nom you. Especially if you go out of bounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of them are not entirely blue, though. I will say that. Like, for instance, this guy is a bluish green. But that's because his environment is got a lot of green in it.
Yeah. I mean, you there's an element of stealth, I guess. You don't want them to be super obvious until you're closer.
Yeah. So, there is that. Purple is royalty, royal nobility, quality, and luxury. There's another thing with color theory that purple is, and that is straight up corruption and poison. That shows up often as the color purple.
Sure.
And that's partially because we've gotten into this mindset that, nobility is not always good. In fact, more often than not, it's evil.
I mean, yeah, your purple's also the color of like bruises, or sometimes a diseased wound could turn purplish.
Yeah.
So there is that association with corruption in that sense.
Yeah, so it's a mixture of like your wounds and what some people see as like the nobility being evil. Purple can be used a lot for that too, and subsumed for that. Then we got black, which is mystery, evil, or grief. The grief comes from, everybody wears black at funerals, so we just kind of associate black with that event.
Yep.
And it's the nature of the beast. Evil, black being evil is very much, I want to say, a Western European thing, or a European thing that they incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at other cultures, black isn't always evil. It just means shadow, or it just means the absence of energy.
Yes.
So...
Well, yeah, I was going to say the black and white dichotomy is like day and night, and people tend to be fearful of the night because they can't see. And so, things that are hidden, which plays into the mystery, but also that fear makes them, wonder if there's something evil out there lurking.
Right. And black, by the way, you can utilize a lot for both good and evil. White is sincerity, good, cleanliness, holy purity, and mourning. Or mourning. I haven't seen white for mourning, so that's a new one for me. But the rest of them I've seen.
Yeah, I forget. There are cultures where it is common to wear white in mourning, but I could not name one off the top of my head.
I'm sure if we looked, we could find it.
Yeah.
But white tends to be the good color, black tends to be the evil color, and that's because with white you can see everything. You know where everything is. Where black is hiding things. It's shadow, it's darkness, you can't detect it. And we do have a fear of the unknown. Now, the reason why I bring this up, and then they talk about further down here, warm tones, cool tones, Western dystopian, noir cyberpunk, and all this other jazz. But we're going to move down to where it says some ways you can use color. One of them is wayfinding. There's one more color I wanted to bring up, and that was gold. And that tends to be money. Like, Anne brought this up in the car when me and her were discussing it, and she's right, gold is the color we use for money. For more often than not in games. With green occasionally filling that role when we're in modern games.
Yeah, modern context.
But if it's not a modern game, it tends to be gold. Even Mass Effect, when you get credits, it shows up in a gold text. Which is like, okay, that's pointing out this is money. This is the color of money.
Yep.
But you can... so, back on the topic, that was after my little ramble there. Wayfinding. You can use colors in your D&D game for wayfinding. Like, if you describe an area like more than the rest of the area, like if you pick one section out to describe more, your players are going to key in that there's something about that.
Yes. Players have excellent radar for descriptive text, and depending on what kind of players you have, that might draw them to that area or cause them to perversely avoid that area just to see if that's where you want them to go, and therefore they need to go somewhere else.
Yeah. It depends on your players. We've both had players that have basically taken the descriptive test and go, that means it's dangerous because you're talking about that a lot. I'm going to go that way.
Or, I want to see what you didn't prepare. Improvise for me.
Yeah, improvise, bitch. Go. It's like, god damn it. But you can use it for wayfinding. You can also use it, we just discussed this, telling a user when it's safe and when it's not.
Yeah.
So coloration can definitely be used for that in tabletop games. If you describe someone wearing a lot of blacks and reds and things of that nature, your players are going to clue in that person probably is going to be evil.
Which is fantastic, because then you can make that the good guy, which is a great way to pull a little surprise or swerve.
Yep. You can also make the bad guy wearing nice clothing that isn't that darker color.
If it is too much nicer than the average person wears, it's immediately questioned.
I'm not sure if you heard Ann on that one.
Part of it.
She said if the clothing is too much nicer than what the average person wears, it's immediately questioned.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that. You can use color for story and development. That's more of a video game trope. You really can't use it on that. So there is that. Then they talk about color theory in games, an overview. I'm trying to see. Color signifying faction. That's also a big thing.
Sure.
Because factions will wear colors, especially if they're out in the open. And that could give your players a hint to that whether they should trust someone or not. And you can use that to both your advantage and disadvantage. Oh, you god damn it! Quickly, just fireballed my tavern.
You have dinner.
Thank you. Thank you kindly. I just want to bury my butter in noodles real quick.
I don't want to hear about it. I made dinner.
Hey, I know. I appreciate it. So yeah, you can use color to basically tell everyone is like, hey, this is the city guard. You can trust them. Hey, this is an assassin's guild. You should shank them. Like, green is for saving, red is for shanking. As an example. Or sometimes the good guys are in red. You never know. But be consistent is the big thing. You could also use color to communicate function. For example, one of the things we gamers have learned throughout history is if a barrel is red, it means it's going to go boom. There's actually a trope for that. It's the red barrel trope. Because red barrels explode. We've gotten used to that thanks to Doom.
Mm-hmm.
Doom taught us this shit. It's like, yeah, let's shoot a barrel and it goes boom boom. They also say color for world building and traversal. That's not necessarily useful in D&D. And then there's color for emotion building. This is definitely useful in D&D. For example, like, we saw, like, for example, you describe a sunset on a beach and you go into detail about the colors of the sunset and all that jazz. It's probably going to make your players feel more relaxed. Most of the time.
Yeah.
But if you tell them that it's like you're dealing with a pitch black hallway, there's like green moss kind of lining the wall, and you can see like the gray tile with slight cracks in it with like some dirt in there, like brown dirt, it's going to make them feel a little bit more uneasy.
Yes.
So you can use color to cause emotions. Purple can also seem mysterious. So if you make an object purple, your players are going to want to explore it more sometimes. Because we're just mind-coded for that. Colder items tend to be white or blue. So if you want the item to be an ice item, like an ice sword or something, throw some blue, throw some white on there. Make it, if you want to give those hints away. If you want to go fire, go the opposite. Go reds, go oranges, things of that nature. Acids, you want greens, so on and so forth. So there's that. Now there's one guy, I'm not going to play the video, but I wanted to point him out. His name is Rasputin. Alright, I have him on my screen. It'll be up in a moment, I think, for you.
Alright.
And he does a lot of video game videos. Talking about tropes in video games, how they work, things of that nature. I highly recommend it. One of the big projects he did was getting his girlfriend/wife, I think they got married in the middle of it or something, to play video games for the first time. And he documented it. Like, he didn't have her on camera, but he had her play certain types of games, and in return, he took notes of what we expect as gamers have become normal in games versus what new players would interact with.
Right.
And this is also a good lesson for tabletop RPGs. Because some of us who've been playing tabletop RPGs for a long time, we have tropes in our head of what to expect.
Oh, yes.
Like,
well, and
go ahead.
I was going to say, and all of us have watched, movies and television shows. So even those of us who are not gamers probably have a lot of these tropes in our head.
Oh yeah, but like for example, like when me and Gamera here see a red dragon, we're like, okay, that thing's gonna breathe fire.
Yep.
We know that's a thing. So sometimes it's interesting to flip the script and have the red dragon have an ability to breathe another element.
Sure. Or
Yeah.
very easily, just to give a run-of-the-mill example, it's a red dragon, but guess what? It's an albino. So it looks like a white dragon unless you get close enough to see that its eyes are a different color.
Yeah. Albino is a thing. Or for some cases, the scales went through hypermelination.
Sure.
And it looks black. Until you get much closer and you realize, oh shit, that's red. Just a very dark red.
Absolutely. And honestly, I wouldn't be above having a very clever dragon change the color of its scales to get one over on some people.
Yeah, I mean, they could do that with simple spells like Alter Self. And most dragons have magic using ability. So that is not crazy. But the video I have up on the screen is called The Color of Corruption, How Purple is Used in Video Games. And that was the video I highly recommend that's interesting about this. Because he talks heavily about what purple used to mean, what it means now, and how it is filling corruption. So there's that. What's the playlist where it's called? Gaming for a Non-Gamer. That's what it's called.
Okay.
And he has 8 videos for it. 7 are actually the actual project, and the last one was Best of a Gamer. One of them was virtual reality, and that wasn't his significant other at that point. He got his parents involved, and they played VR games.
That sounds like it could be interesting.
Oh yeah, it was definitely interesting because they talked about what they learned as they played the game, because he would not give any real information about how to play the game other than basic controls.
Right.
He would teach them the basic controls, but none of the decision-making process.
Right.
And in the process of this whole project, by the way, he found out his significant other loved Minecraft. Her and him started playing Minecraft together a lot. And so there is that. Then there's like the psychology of video game design, once again, conveying emotion, we talked about. Brand identity, sometimes, but that's not really important. Focusing attention, that's mostly also a video game thing. But you can use that to encourage your tabletop players to pay attention to that as well. The biggest problem with that is, once again, you're overly describing something, and that is one aspect that, once again, your players will pick up on. So that was all the screen stuff I had. So I'm going to go back to just chatting. There we go.
I was going to say, on a related note, not exactly color, but related to light, one of the things I pulled in my last Pathfinder game, and it got a good reaction that I just absolutely loved. They were exploring a ruin for an old fallen civilization that was very high magic. And I had described this civilization as they used magic a little differently. They actually had like magical energy circuits, and so they would bind outsiders and elementals at the center of like this web of magical inlaid circuits to do different effects. And so they went into one of the ancient, holds. Like, it was a magical school that had been buried in the sand, and they were exploring it. And they got to an area that was basically only accessible through a portal, and they answered the riddle and got through the portal. And I described how the magical circuitry here was failing, so the lights that was normally magical lights that were on all the time were flickering. So it was mostly dark with occasional flickers of light, just like you'd see in a horror movie.
Yeah, that would be creepy as shit.
And one of our players was like, I hate this so much. And she had the biggest grin on her face, but she was like, I hate this.
It's like, surprise, motherfucker, it's horror now.
Yeah, and very consciously invoking those horror tropes in D&D, and yeah, it really went over well.
And that's another thing. Like, my last online game, they finally killed a monster that they've been dealing with off and on. They kept dealing with its after effects, never it itself.
Sure.
And the first time they ran into it, it was a ruin that they had just recently retaken from a necromancer. And this thing came in and killed all of the archaeologists.
Yeah.
And then left. And everybody was like, okay, what the hell, so on and so forth. They did eventually figure out it was some form of devil. Eventually, this last game, though, they finally caught up to it, and they've killed it. But when they killed it, it self-destructed. It went boom. And to give you an idea of what it was, is essentially the Predator in demon form.
Okay.
And that's what I sicked on them. So, like, any of them who had watched the Predator before knew some of the tropes.
Yep.
And if they behaved in the right way, it would give them what they needed.
Yep.
To succeed. But it was fun because they had to deal with its like chameleon effect and all that jazz. And they wrecked it though. There was only one creature versus like 5 or 6 adventurers.
Yeah.
Action economy was not on its side.
Yeah. That will usually do in most villains.
Oh yeah. But the party had fun. That was the important thing.
Absolutely.
And this thing was tracking the necromancer they're hunting. So it was a mutual enemy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that helps. Also, sounds can be used like heavily to encourage certain behaviors. Like
absolutely.
Yeah. And that is always the crazy thing about it. Is like you can get let me turn this down. God damn, it's loud. Oh. The mixer.
Ah.
There it is. 10. I'll turn it down to 25. That should be good. A little bit more. Let's go for 20. Hey, I said 20, not 25. So like some sounds can be used to great effect. If you do like that like rattling sound, you can easily make that sound for like undead.
Sure.
They're like that gargly almost rattle.
Oh, yeah, I get you.
Yeah. That is almost the sound of undead that a lot of people come to associate.
Sure.
If you use like a hissing voice, like you elongate your S's and stuff, that encourages your players that it's a reptile. It's like heis. It's like everything's going wrong.
Always makes me think of the Disney Robin Hood with Sir Hiss.
Sir Hiss, oh god. Yeah, that's a good example. Good lord. Because he definitely is a fun time there.
But not just reptilian though. If you do the S's, you know, that kind of serpentine performance, even if they're not thinking, oh, he's like a serpent man, they're gonna not trust him because he sounds very, you know, snaky and underhanded.
That is very true. Sorry,
But
I didn't get my dinner till late.
Yeah, maybe it's just an unfortunate speech impediment. Maybe he can be trusted.
And certain accents, by the way, people associate with lack of intelligence or heightened intelligence.
Yes.
And that's not always good.
No,
But it does happen. Like, for example, the Cockney accent
Oh, yes.
is usually considered unintelligent
Yes.
Annoying as fuck.
and hates the accent.
Really?
Yeah, she hates the Cockney accent.
Fastest way to make me immediately try and murder your character. Don't care what alignment I am.
She can't say in the accent. But
I will file that away.
for good or for ill.
Yeah, one of those.
You realize I live with Ruby, and I am very. Some of his bad ideas on how to torture his players come from me. Some of his worst ones come from me.
It's a good thing he's not one of my players.
Yes.
So there is that. But a proper British accent, like the Queen's British, usually is associated with well-to-do, poshness, sometimes self-importance, or there's a word I'm looking for, I can't think of it.
I mean, we tend to perceive the British accent as smarter and just generally someone more worthy of our attention.
Arrogant. I was also thinking of arrogant.
There's definitely a tone of arrogance in it that can rub people the wrong way, but for whatever reason, Americans tend to view British accents as smarter than they are. So regardless of your actual level of intelligence, if you have a British accent, the average American will see you as a little bit smarter.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting, but not necessarily good.
Yep. There's also French for smug.
Oh, yes, we do have an association with the French.
Yep. A lot of people see it as a very smug accent.
Of course, I'm sure the French think much the same of us.
Oh, yeah.
And some of these accents just go straight to national stereotypes. You hear somebody with a Canadian accent, you're thinking, oh, they're so polite.
Yeah, Irish tends to be angry.
Yeah, you can see an Irish accent as angry, but or you tend to think of them in cartoonish leprechaun terms, on the other hand, sometimes.
Oh, yeah, or drunk.
Yeah, unfortunate stereotypes.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunate stereotypes are unfortunate.
But yeah, you can use a British accent to convey an air of authority for an NPC, or make it seem like an authority if you want to trick the players into trusting said NPC.
One accent that has been consistently thrown onto one particular race of D&D is dwarves, and the Scottish accent.
The Scottish dwarves.
Yep. Oh, what can I do for you?
I don't know how that trope started.
I think it was the old Lord of the Rings like thing, and like someone described it once, like Gimli having a Scottish accent.
I mean, maybe it's been a long time since I saw the Ralph Bakshi cartoons. Maybe there was some element of that there.
Or maybe like Tolkien put it in there as like to describe it to someone.
I don't think so.
Who knows? It's like, it's weird. But it's been pervasive as hell.
Yep.
It's like, god dang. Like, I cannot think of like another thing that has been any more pervasive than that.
It's impressively associated.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other D&D race that has an accent married to it that hard
Than dwarves.
at all. Yeah.
Dwarves is the one for me that's like nothing comes even close to being like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, god damn. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's just like, what the hell happened? What is there any other race that's gotten that hard of a
I mean, I've seen other accent associations with races sometimes. I mean, you usually get elves as haughty, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that they're like with an English accent.
Right.
But sometimes you'll get halflings with like an Irish accent because they're, just simple farm folk, and they're happy and they do the things and blah blah blah, and that's not at all as common as Scottish dwarves. Um,
I'm trying to think. But yeah, you can use accents to like a great effect.
Oh yes. Though my caution with accents is always don't feel like you have to do an accent either as a player or a GM if A, you don't feel like you can do the accent consistently enough to make it an enjoyable experience for yourself and the others. If it adds to the game, absolutely, that's fine. If you feel like you're going to forget it half the time, and don't worry about it. Don't feel compelled.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is always be conscious of racial stereotypes that could be insensitive. No one wants to hear your very clever Chinese or Japanese accent that blends your L's and R's and D's. And sounds like something that the South Park guys would come up with.
Yeah.
Less is more.
Yeah, definitely less is more. Like, good God.
I in my Call of Cthulhu game this past weekend, one of the NPCs they ran into was a policeman, a Cockney policeman, and he had basically been at the wrong place at the right time when an alien possessing a woman's body was in the area, and they swapped bodies, basically. So now this constable is in the body of a Chinese woman, and the Chinese woman, or the alien that was in the Chinese woman's body is in the body of the constable. So for the purposes of the player characters getting to talk to both of them afterward, for the alien in the constable's body, I said he has a kind of very, refined, neutral English accent, but I didn't try to do it. But for the constable, I went ahead and dove into it. It's like, yeah, I don't know what happened, sir. She grabbed hold of me, and, it was just there. But that was a single conversation. It wasn't an accent that I was going to have to try to remember to do every time he showed up, because he wasn't really going to show up that often.
Right.
But it was a good little spotlight, and I think helped bring the character's plight, more into focus.
Which helps a lot. And that's a good thing to have. It's like, it's okay for a character to have an accent. Just be careful about having an entire race with accents.
Yeah, I'm still puzzled by the origins of the dwarf Scottish thing. It is just...
I wonder what started that. Let's see.
Yeah, I wonder if there's anything easily Googleable about that.
Scottish accent.
Why are dwarves Scottish?
Yeah. What started it? Why do dwarves have a Scottish accent? They began as Norse Germanic earth spirit, then Tolkien made them as a Semitic people with a language and history similar to the Jews, but at some point between now and then the Scottish have become universally Scottish. That doesn't tell me shit.
Yeah, it's basically... That's a Reddit post asking the question. Let's see... Someone's response is, not just dwarves and Vikings who are Scottish, Spartans are as well. And Sean Connery was Agamemnon, and Brian Cox was Agamemnon, ergo Agamemnon is Scottish. Who will become Scottish next? I'm not sure, but I'd put my money on Samurai.
It does happen in Lord of the Rings, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people are putting it on Blizzard.
Could be. Could be.
Because in the Warcraft video game series, they had a Scottish accent.
It looks like there was a fantasy novel that influenced some of Dungeons and Dragons that had a dwarf character with a Scottish accent that could have even influenced like Gary Gygax.
Yeah, and then it says Warhammer, they speak with a Yorkshire accent.
Yes. Let's see.
Yeah, Tolkien took it from Norse or Vikings. Was for the dwarves. So
well, someone here specifically mentions the 1977 animated Hobbit movie did not give them Scottish accents.
Right. From separate lineage, blah blah blah. They don't talk Scottish at all. They sound like Arabic or Hebrew. That's nice. Finnish inflection. I think it looks like a lot of people are saying Warcraft.
I mean, that certainly popularized it, but I swear I think I heard Scottish dwarves before Warcraft.
Yeah, same here. That's why it's bothering me. It's like, I don't want to say that's the answer.
Let's see.
It's like, It's like, god damn, you can never, figure it out. It's like,
Some people are saying that the Tolkien dwarves seem at least a little Scottish to them, so that's possibly that they read the text and was like, okay, I'm hearing it in a Scottish accent.
I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah, let's see. Is there anything else?
It's like, damn, man, I'm not sure.
Let's see. Standard fantasy dwarves speak with a Scottish or generally Northern European brogue. Let's see.
Right. Okay.
This I'm looking at an Atlas Obscura article, and it's talking about Tolkien refining the tropes that would become dwarves. He did give them a language, but it was more of a Semitic influenced language.
That's what I found too. It was like not Scottish. Everything says not Scottish. I'm like, okay, then where did the Scottish one come from?
Okay, so as radio and film adaptations of Tolkien's works were released in later decades, you can see the slow evolution of the dwarven accent from the Low British of 1977's cartoon version of The Hobbit to the more stylized accents of the pair of dwarves in 1985's Legend to the Welsh by way of Scotland grumblings of John Rhys Davies Gimli from Peter Jackson's films. And so that might be it. It might just be that over the course of like 80s fantasy movies that featured dwarves, they kind of leaned into, well, what's a UK regional accent that we want to throw to differentiate them from everybody else who just sounds British.
Yeah. And in this case, they chose
Scottish.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess that answers the question, but still strange that none of the other fantasy races have been saddled with something quite so consistently.
Yeah, it's just like, What is going on here? It always seemed weird to me.
Yeah, I've seen some fun posts suggesting
I still swear, John, we did
alternate
all
accent ideas for different races, and
I'm sorry, Anne said something funny.
oh,
You don't disagree with me.
She said all drow should have Australian accents.
sure.
It like she saw a picture of it once, and it was a little funny thing where it's compares drow to Australians.
Sure.
And they both come from like down under. They have weird food.
Everything wants to murder you.
Everything in the environment wants to kill you or something like that.
Yeah.
Drow are Australian. Oh god, someone wrote a full essay on it. What the hell?
I think I saw
I'm here for
someone
this.
suggesting that it would be really entertaining if elves had a Brooklyn accent.
Yeah, but no, this is what they were talking about right here. Drow elves Australian live in a place called the Underdark, live in a place called Down Under, exiled from the surface, exiled by the English, known for dangerous creatures including big spiders. Conclusion: Drow have Australian accents.
Oh yes.
It's like, yeah, you can't. That's not wrong. It's just like shit, man. Oh god.
But yeah, an accent can convey information about a character to your party for good or for ill, and yeah, it can lead them into making the right conclusion or the wrong conclusion. I can think of plenty of examples of basically people trusting someone because he has a refined British accent and he turns out to be a con artist.
Yeah, it's like, you guys. Yeah, it's like, that was dumb.
I mean, just look at history. Why would you think that the British are trustworthy?
Yeah, it's just like, shit.
It sort of reminds me of that old joke. Why does the sun never set on the British Empire? Because God doesn't trust the British in the dark.
Oh no. Yeah, it's like, shit. Okay, is there a button to make this rotate? So, like, I'm having an issue with this one game where it's like, I want to...
Why do you leave dirty socks everywhere?
Sorry.
So what are you playing?
Pathfinder Kingmaker.
Ah.
I was trying to put this park over here next to my temple and monument, but it is being a pain.
Huh.
Because it won't let me rotate the building. So I'm going to have to do it this way. I don't like doing it, but... Monument goes there. Because that doesn't get anything from monument. Park goes there. There we go. It is what it is. Trying to think what else. Oh, is this the new water bill, hun? Okay. But no, like Drow having Australian accents could be funny.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no.
I will accept nothing else for Drow.
See, the problem is, like, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, the British are, like, kind and polite and everything. It's like, you do understand that the British, like, murdered in their way across the entire globe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say one of the best characters I ever had anybody play in any of my games was I was running a pulp game, so it was set in like 1934, I believe. And my players made a bunch of interesting characters. I actually really liked all of them. But my friend Lawrence made Reginald Spencer, Sir Reginald Spencer. He did have a knighthood. And Sir Reginald Spencer was the most chauvinistic, misogynistic, arrogant, just everything you could imagine British guy of all time.
Oh, God.
And he was hilarious. He, of course, had graduated from Oxford, which was one of only 2 acceptable schools, the other being Cambridge, if you wanted to get an agricultural degree. And he was just absolutely hilariously over the top in his biases, his prejudices.
Oh my God.
And Lawrence played him perfectly, that these made him a lesser person. These were flaws, gaps in his perception where he would underestimate people. And it was hysterical. And he was just a rude asshole to most people he met because, you know, unless they were a white, well-to-do English man with an acceptable education, then he would find some way to look down on them. And the moment that I remember most for him and just sort of sealed the deal is in like one of the first adventures I ran, I gave him a rival archaeologist, because that's what he was. He was an archaeologist.
Right.
And they were both at a German castle, and they'd had a kind of, you know, hostile little conversation, and the guy returned to his bedroom and went to bed. And then Lawrence surprised me by having his character go visit his rival in bed and straight up murdered him.
I was gonna say smothered him with a pillow.
No, he shot him.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He silenced his gun and shot him. And I was like, okay, this was going to be a recurring NPC, but I have another idea. So I gave that guy a daughter. And the daughter later confronted him about some stuff. And he couldn't bring himself to kill what was essentially an innocent young woman who had been mothered by a woman that both he and his rival had an interest in. So they had another little testy conversation, and she basically ended it up, you know, me playing her as, she said, "So stay alive, Reginald. Your life is mine to take." And he said, "I'll stay alive for you, Marie. Professional courtesy." And I had her retort, "Since when are you a professional?" And then I swear to God, I shit you not, the other 2 players at the table said, "Or courteous."
Oh my God, that is great. That would be a great interaction.
I had to stop because I was laughing so hard that they at the same time had blurted out, "Or courteous." And Lawrence just stopped cold too, because he was like, "Yeah, that's fair.
That's fair." That's a fair thing. Oh my God.
Still one of the greatest moments from that campaign.
Oh man, that is wild. Oh man.
I do love a good pulp adventure game. It is one of my favorite genres that is a little underserved.
Yeah, I'd say pulp is definitely... It's not well loved, and you can do a lot with a pulp game.
Absolutely.
It is just so open because, like, you want to make it more realistic? Okay, then you just go on adventures fighting, you know, whatever government you're fighting, okay?
Sure.
If you want to include the fantastical, then you're going to be going down the route of, like, say, a great movie, The Mummy.
Yes.
That's a great example of a pulp setting that involves magic.
Absolutely.
And that's not even high magic, that's just magic.
No.
High magic would be way different.
Yeah, and pulp means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but honestly, my favorite is just sort of that late 1920s to 1940 era, basically pre-World War II, and you can do globe-trotting adventure. You've got like Indiana Jones, and The Mummy is such a good movie.
Oh yeah,
one of my favorites.
The Mummy is by far and away one of the best pulp movies out there. It's got the right amount of humor in it.
Yes.
And that's a big thing for pulp. You need humor.
Yes.
Like, so many people are like, oh, you know, you don't need humor. Da, da. I'm like, no, you need humor. You have to have humor.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you know, things are going to go really bad for you.
But, yeah, getting back to the expectations thing. So, I mean, that's a pretty decent segue into discussions of genre. You know, when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you're pretty much playing in standard fantasy tropes.
Most of the time.
Your players are going to have expectations based on those tropes. But you can always play with that for a single adventure. Now, I will give a word of caution to folks out there. If you're going to play with the tropes of a campaign, if people showed up to play D&D, you can't drop Call of Cthulhu on them. Never. One of the greatest temptations in Dungeons and, or not Dungeons and Dragons, in TTRPGs is the campaign where it's like, oh, I'm going to have everybody make modern characters, and then I'm going to, you know, have aliens abduct them, and now they're, you know, modern people stuck in an alien environment. We've completely switched the context on them, and that sounds so cool. Like, you know, having modern characters dealing with these problems that are totally out of context for them, but your players were told to make modern characters. They've got backgrounds. They've got associated NPCs and family members. You have just plucked them away from like 2/3 of what they wrote in their head for that character.
Which is not good, especially if you don't tell them it's coming.
Right. So that's the thing. Never do a bait and switch campaign without well, I mean, if you tell them it's not a bait and switch, obviously.
Yeah.
So never do a bait and switch campaign. Now, can you dive into like another genre for an adventure or two? Absolutely. Just don't deprive your players of all the stuff that they created.
Yeah, that tends to get them really pissed.
Yeah. But yeah, you can have great adventures, like I was talking about earlier. That horror touch or two that I added to that one adventure. It's hard for Pathfinder characters to be legitimately scared of anything because they're epic heroes. But my players responded to those horror tropes, and you know there were some ghosts moving around in that area. Some of which were friendly, some of which were neutral, some of which were hostile. So they really got to have kind of a horror-like experience. And that was a fun change of pace.
Oh yeah, and for me, like one book I have, which is the Twisted Taverns book.
Uh-huh.
They have one of the taverns is a sailing vessel.
Oh yeah,
and which is cool. But what makes it even more entertaining is the story of the ship involves the dead crew from a botched pirate raid.
Ah.
Because they used to be pirates, and then they retired from it, essentially.
Right.
And the crew is still there in ghost form. Some of them are helping maintain the ship. A couple of them want to rebel and kill everyone.
Well, that's tense.
Oh, yes. So that is always entertaining.
I think one of my favorite tricks that I ever pulled with a group, I'm trying to remember what system I did it with. Was it... I believe I was running a Golden Age superheroes game. Yeah, so I was running like a 1940s superheroes game. And people were having fun with that. But one of the elements that I'd introduced in that game is some of the stuff that they were dealing with was associated with a pulp adventure society that had existed 10 years before. They had found some dangerous artifacts that some of their villains were now trying to get. And so they had that backstory. And what I did for one session is I dialed back the clock 20 years. I gave them pre-generated characters and said, hey, you guys are each going to play one of the members of that pulp society on one of the adventures where they recovered one of these objects. Give them a little glimpse of history that way. And when I did that, I switched systems because I was running the superheroes and mutants and masterminds. But for the pulp game, I played Adventure, the White Wolf one.
Oh boy.
So that gave them a totally different feel. So it really, kind of put them in the mindset of, hey, we're not people with superhuman abilities. We are these, explorers and archaeologists and adventurers.
Jesus. Oh man, that is wild. And switching systems also was a clever idea.
Yeah, it separated them from the characters. That way they, didn't have expectations based on that. It was one session where they were playing these alternate characters, and then they were back to their heroes, but, they had fun, and I got to run Adventure, which was, my secret goal.
It's like, this is my secret goal. It's like, oh, okay.
Adventure remains my favorite White Wolf game of all time.
Adventure is very well written, I gotta say.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite system I've ever played, but it is definitely
It's the only White Wolf game that avoids the thing that I hate most about White Wolf games, which is, hey, you lose control of your character because you saw a fire and you failed a willpower roll, or you're hungry and you failed a willpower roll. So now you're an NPC for at least a few minutes. That sucks.
That's kind of bullshit, and I never liked that either. And every White Wolf system seems to have that.
But Adventure does not.
Yeah.
It straight up doesn't.
Yeah, and that is a good thing. Damn, I was trying to think of something. I don't know. Did Aberrant have that?
Aberrant has the corruption, so it's not as likely unless you're slowly building up that I forget what it's called. Taint,
yeah. Yeah, but I don't think that takes away your character. That's more of a character death at that point.
Yeah, basically it just has that permanent loss of character if you get too much taint. So it really, I don't think you have I'm going to black out and I have to go gamble for 5 hours or whatever, like an Exalted.
Yeah.
Satisfy my vices.
That was always annoying. Scion has a few minor things that do that, but nothing that is a solid single character. Yeah, I don't think of anything that stands out that is like, hey, this is what is up? God damn it, I'm trying to think. Okay, whatever. Yeah, nothing in Scion stands out other than a few minor abilities.
Yeah, and it varies between White Wolf games as to how hard they hit that beat.
Yeah, some hit it hard.
Yeah. Mage was usually a little more light touch about it, but you could still kind of get your head up your ass with your avatar screwing you over.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's that wonderful high. Reality basically fucks you over. Have a nice day.
Yeah, well, but there was in addition to Paradox, there was that mechanic where basically, I forget what it's called because it's been so long since I played the original Mage.
Yeah.
But you could sort of lose control of yourself and have to go, I guess, I don't know, do magic tricks for a couple of days by yourself. I don't even remember what the downside was. It was just, yeah, there was an NPCing of you for a little bit. Vampire is obviously one of the worst.
Oh my god, Vampire is definitely the worst for that.
And Werewolf had it. I know Mage had a version of it. I'm pretty sure Wraith did have it, but I never played Wraith, so I don't know what it's called.
Wraith was more of like, how do I put this? Oh, I know it too. Because I have played Wraith. It's basically like death takes you, essentially, for a short ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something weird. And I can't think of it off the top of my head.
But yeah, it's like someone at the White Wolf offices were like, you know what's really fun for players? To lose control of their characters. We should put that in every game.
Yeah, it's like, no.
Drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's exceptionally annoying.
But yeah, basically an adventure, no mechanic for that at any point.
Which is good.
Absolutely. It was just, it was refreshing for White Wolf to do a game that was free of angst.
Yeah, oh my god. That's, out of all the systems we've ever played, White Wolf is the worst for, like, you know, the whole wanna cut your wrist bullshit.
Yeah. Just, the world sucks and it's gonna die and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Nope, that's not my idea of fun, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I do play Warhammer 40k and all, but like that is different.
The Warhammer tabletop war game, I don't even think about the larger context of the plot or story. I guess if I were playing in the Warhammer RPG, I might a little bit.
I've played the Warhammer RPG, and I gotta say it's a little complicated.
Which version did you play?
Dark Crusade or something?
Or Dark Heresy?
Dark Heresy, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I played.
Most of the people were humans. The storyteller had me play a Chaos Marine.
Oh, were you guys playing Black Crusade then?
Yeah, Black Crusade, that's what it was. I was like, I knew Crusade was in it.
Well, I mean, technically it's the same system as Dark Heresy, it's just a different focus. They produced, like, is it 4 or 5? They produced several different RPGs with the same engine, but scaled differently.
Yeah.
So you have, I think it's 5. There are 5 of them. You have Black Crusade and Dark Heresy. You have Only War. You have Rogue Trader and Death Watch. And the kind of character you can play differs with each of the 5. So, like, in Black Crusade, you're playing Chaos Worshippers, which can mean Chaos Marines, it can mean Chaos Cultists. In Dark Heresy, you're generally playing Inquisitorial Acolytes, so you're, playing essentially normal humans.
Hey, Max. Hey there, Max Dadbot. But yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and Only War, you're playing Imperial Guardsmen. Death Watch, you're playing Space Marines. Rogue Trader, you're playing a Rogue Trader and his retinue.
Yeah. But our group, this was a game run by Dave. I think it was Dave. It might have been someone else. No, Dave was a character. Because Dave's character was a human making drugs out of people.
Yeah.
And so there was that. I remember that much. Jai was a human. A few other people were humans. But I was a Chaos Marine of Khorne.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 chain axes. Like, I was dual-wielding chain axes.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Ein. Hey, Ein. How's it going, man? And anytime we got into combat, like, the players would, like, try to trick their way out of it and so on and so forth. Me being a Khornite Chaos Marine, my solution was I apply axe to problem. And I keep applying it until the problem's gone.
It's, one of my favorite humor bands is the Arrogant Worms. They're a Canadian folk comedy band. They have
I
a
know
song.
of them.
Okay, they have a song called Malcolm. Have you ever heard of Malcolm?
No. The one I've heard the Arrogant Worms for was their Happy Birthday song.
Okay. But Malcolm, the gist of Malcolm as the song is Malcolm solves his problems with a chainsaw, and he never has the same problem twice.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Fuck. But, like, other ways I gotta say, though, you could definitely use to help your party or get them in the right area is the glorious question that all DMs have learned to ask at least once. You know which question this is.
I don't necessarily, but I'm sure I'll recognize it once you say it. I'm just not sure where your mind's at.
Are you sure?
Oh, that question.
Yeah.
That is a great question.
Oh yeah, that is a definite great question. It's like, are you sure about this?
That will definitely make your players pucker.
Yeah, or make them seriously rethink their choices. Because that is always the fun one. Is like, do I really want to do this? Well, are you sure about that?
I have to say, one of my learned GM skills is never giving a straight answer to any question. Do we find any traps? There don't seem to be any traps.
You don't see any.
Yes.
It's like, that is always a good one, because they're like, oh, shit.
But yes, are you sure?
So did you really tell your D&D group that I tend to go next baking when you go to War Horsemen?
Yes, I did.
That's not nice.
It's accurate.
Still not nice.
Oh, by the way, do you need to do a second HelloFresh spot now?
No. I gotta wait a day between them.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna be doing it tomorrow. I just wanted to mention it a little bit in the beginning. Because of the pictures there.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the important thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget if you needed to do it.
No, I'm good.
But yeah, I mean, the GM can set the players to guessing themselves, or to second guessing themselves with just the simplest of questions. It is a wonderful and terrible power we have.
Yep. Or asking them, what is your current HP?
Oh, man.
That one gets people to pucker up real quick. The pucker factor on that one is...
work with you so much because you have a particular voice.
You deserved it.
When you say that, if we're screwed versus you're fucking with us. And I know that difference all too well.
Yes, but a lot of our players don't.
Some of your veteran players know it.
Yeah, some of the more veteran ones. Like, I would say Gamera here, if I'd use that voice, he would recognize it. Because you tend to pick up on things pretty easily.
I mean, I do have a certain perceptiveness, but honestly, I've been in the game long enough that it's like, oh, the GM's asking me how many hit points I have. The reason for that is most likely not, oh, I want to, harm you or you're about to get harmed. It's, I want to make sure I'm not about to kill you with what's about to happen.
Yeah, I want to make sure I don't one-shot you.
Exactly. And I think that maybe did come up once in the Star Wars game, the one time Barton went down. Do you remember that?
Yep, and I asked you how much HP you had, or how many wounds you had.
Yes, because it was wounds and vitality.
Yeah, and I asked wounds because you were already down. Yeah, it critted. And so I made sure, very sure, not to do more than your max wounds.
Yes.
Because I don't want to one-shot my players. I'm not a dick.
I don't turn into a tasty bug treat. Because I already had a mosquito trying to land on me.
And just had a mosquito try to land on her, so now she's like, shit, I need to get the candle.
I showed my therapist the view off of the deck. She liked it.
Yeah. So there's that. Asking their HP is one thing for especially with newer players.
Yep.
Asking them what metal items they have
Yeah.
also will cause panic.
That one more so.
That one more so than the HP.
Asking
Yeah,
if
I
it's
mean, of course,
rustable is worse.
the classic thought is the rust monster, but could be some kind of magnetic or electrical trap.
Oh yeah. Now the rust monster definitely is the oh fuck me. Like this is going to end real bad. It's like shit, man.
Every time I think about rust monsters, though, I think back to a campaign I was in as a player where we were, heroes of the mainland, and the mainland was getting invaded by this island society that had more advanced, magical technology. And so they had, walking mech suits. And I was like, hey, I'm a ranger. Do I know where we can find some rust monsters? So we corralled ourselves some rust monsters. The cleric and the party buffed them up 6 ways from Sunday. We just sent them out to fight the mechs.
Oh no. Because that'll end badly. Let's see. So, yeah, what metal items were... Oh, alright. So we're going to be rating Artemis Harpy at the end of stream.
Right on.
I have to remember that because Squiggly just paid for that. Guide the raid. I'm gonna bet good money she's playing Dragon Age. He or she is playing Dragon Age.
This requires your attention.
Because that's Squiggly's video game obsession. Which, there's nothing wrong with being obsessed over a game.
No.
If that's what you're really into. Let's see, what are our fun questions you can get the party to pucker up a bit? Oh, marching order.
Yes.
Asking for marching order. Oh god, that makes people freak the fuck out.
That is a classic. On a related note, okay, so did you all go in the room?
Yeah, did you all of you go in the room, the door, through the doorway and all that shit? It's like, oh man, that makes people go.
As soon as the GM is trying to figure out where all of you are, it means that something is happening that is location related.
Yeah. Shit's gonna go down.
Without a doubt.
And of course, if you want to mess with your players, as sometimes you should, you can ask, okay, did everybody go in the room? And then when they say, yeah, what happened? And no, you don't notice anything.
Yeah, you notice nothing. Nothing seems out of the ordinary.
Nothing seems to have happened.
Yeah. And they'll just instantly become so fucking paranoid about the room, they'll search every nook and cranny of that goddamn room.
Or they're worried that, something happened outside in the room they just left. It's like, oh, what did we miss? So I recommend only doing this if you have time to burn, because your players will immediately go into, oh shit, we missed something.
Yeah, we're missing something, or we just missed something.
Right.
One or the other. And that will cause panic like hell.
And so yeah, you want to do that sparingly, and you want to do that not just sparingly and not always to screw with them. Just, you know, you want to do it enough that they know that if you ask, it doesn't always mean that something has happened.
Yeah. And you don't want to do it in such a way that basically will make other issues come up.
Yes.
So, often, like, you want to do it on occasion.
Yeah.
Please.
And that's always the helpful thing.
Anything else?
Because that's always the fun part, is just saying the word or phrase that just makes them go, oh, okay. Or asking someone for perception rolls.
Sure.
Applause, please.
Because that's another good one. It's just like, oh yeah, what's your perception? And they're like, what? Oh.
Yeah, GM calling for perception rolls. That is usually a sign that something's up, but you should occasionally call for the roll when nothing is up, because that way they can't rely on that. Like, oh, he called for a perception roll. We didn't find anything. We probably didn't roll good enough, so now we go into paranoid mode.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit, what happened?
Yeah, you want to occasionally call for it when there isn't anything to find, because that way your players can't rely on the fact that you called for it to know that there is something to find.
Right.
Applause, please.
A good rule of thumb is, especially if you're playing 5th edition, 5th edition has passive perception. As a DM, write down everyone's passive perception.
Yes.
So you don't have to call for it.
Yeah, passive perception is a wonderful thing. That does sort of remove the problem of, oh, he called for a perception check, therefore there must be something to perceive. Well, not necessarily, but now we've got passive perception, so I don't need to call for it.
Every time.
Right.
Okay, that's weird. Sling staff.
Our path leads on.
So yeah, that's always a thing. It's perception's a good one. What else is another one I would recommend to like either encourage or discourage players? Dead bodies.
Sure. Yeah.
Of especially former adventurers.
Yep. Not just fun dungeon dressing. You can use that as a clear warning sign that the players need to be very, very careful.
Oh yeah, it's like, this could end very badly for you. You probably should, you know, be cautious. And that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Some players will go, oh, look, free loot, and then kill themselves.
Yep.
Because that happens. Because, oh my god, I cannot count how many times I've had a... God damn. How many times I've had, like, 1 or 2 players that have decided, hey, look, there's a dead body. There's probably something I can steal on it. I'm like, there's probably a reason why that body is dead in the first place.
Yep. I mean, by all means, search the body, but recognize that there's a body there because somebody died, and you could be next.
Yeah, you could be the next one if you're not careful. Now, one thing that I saw it in a video. I can't remember who did the video. It was how to do dungeon monsters appropriately to cause anxiety.
Okay.
And so the idea was, you have this dungeon monster. Your goal is to kind of tease the players with it. Let them, like, even if they pass their perception rolls, give them hints of the monster.
Yeah.
Like, you basically go, oh, you saw a flash of red, or, you know, red scales, or a tail,
Sure.
going around the side, things of that nature.
Yeah, and I think this is one area that I could stand to be better at, is I tend to want to give my players too much information sometimes.
I'm kind of
Like,
the same way.
if they make that perception check, it's like, oh yeah, you glimpse the red dragon or whatever. No, it's better sometimes. Less is more. It's a common mantra, especially in horror films, that you don't want to show the full monster too quickly. You want to tease it, like you say. You show a little glint on a carapace, or maybe don't even use the visual senses. They smell something. That way they've perceived that there's something there, but they don't immediately know what it is and start grinding, monster manual statistics in their head.
And that's a big thing. Like, some players will do that where they'll memorize the monster manual. And
Yeah,
will they do that.
One of the things that I did when I ran my very brief 5th edition campaign that I was kind of doing just as a palate cleanser was I bought Tome of Beasts 5e. I think it's from Kobold Press.
Right.
Because it had monsters in it that are not the typical D&D monsters. And it would give me things that I could throw at the party that my veteran players, some of whom have been playing for 30 years, won't immediately recognize. And of course, you can also do fun things like changing up the monsters a little bit. That goes back to kind of, messing with player expectations. You throw them up against a fireproof troll, and they will be very concerned very fast.
A good example of that actually is the game I'm playing right now. In Pathfinder Kingmaker, one of the main chapters, which got me the Southern Isle Marshes here, was trolls were getting a magical brand put on them that made them fire resistant.
There you go.
Fire still did damage, but it was significantly less.
Right.
And everybody was freaking shit out.
As well you should.
Because it's like, wait, fire resistant trolls? No, fuck that.
Yeah, because, that's one of the things that players and characters know. Troll, fire.
Or acid.
Or acid, but, fire's usually a little bit more accessible.
Yeah.
One of the things that the GM in the 5th edition campaign that I'm currently playing in has done is, we started at 5th level, and he's like, you guys know common adventuring stuff, so if you guys come across trolls, you don't have to make that roll to know, we've got to burn them. You've fought trolls before, you know that.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be calling for can I make this roll to know if I need to burn them. And I think that approach is very valid, depending on the tone you're trying to strike, because we know what to do about trolls, and that's great.
Oh yeah, and it's useful too.
It removes some of the unnecessary rolling. We get to do our adventurer thing and feel like we're badasses. And down the line, if he wants to subvert it and throw us up against some trolls that do resist fire, then that'll be a surprise.
Oh yeah, that'll be a hell of a surprise. We're like, oh, fuck me.
And we'll immediately know, and our characters will know, this is not normal.
Yeah, this is definitely not a normal thing.
So, that has its uses too, giving the players kind of a core of information. I think it has mostly come up for us when we fought a Hydra. We knew we needed to burn the heads, or we needed to burn the Hydra after removing the heads, or they could grow back.
Yeah, and that's good knowledge to have.
Yeah.
God dang, I'm trying to think what else. I've used before that has been kind of wild. Hydra eyes as a cooking ingredient. Okay.
Cool.
I'm trying to store all my cooking ingredients now. I was selling them because I needed the money, but now I've gotten to the point where I have like 400,000 gold.
Wow.
Oh, I went around murdering like a lot of shit,
Yeah.
and that helped. And I think the game glitched at one point.
Oh.
Because
Gave
I had like 39,000, and then suddenly that little like 0 appeared one day. And I'm like, I don't know how the fuck that happened. I'm not arguing it, because the money is useful.
Absolutely.
It was just like, this is wild. I don't think I really did anything to it when I went into the programming of this game and fixed one thing. And that was the mercenaries you hire aren't on the same XP percentage you are.
Okay.
Like, they still level as fast as you do. But, like, when you hire them, they're at 0 XP for that level. But they're your level. So if you have, like, say, some XP here...
Yeah.
They don't have it, so they don't level at the same time you do. And that was kind of annoying me. So that's why I went in and fixed my one mercenary character to have the same amount of XP as the rest of my party.
Sure.
Because she's the same level anyway. It was just, are you, going to be doing things or not?
Yeah, that would be very frustrating, I think, to have them constantly lagging behind.
Yeah, it was just like, son of a gun, why? And then it's like, oh, this is why. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, so we still have our city. One of the things I gotta say is a thing in most D&D games I've noticed. I've had usually one player who's decided they want to run a town, create an empire, whatever.
Yeah.
And more often than not, they do not realize how much work that is.
I mean, I like the idea of, a party of adventurers building up a nation or a small town or something. There's a lot of appeal in that. The problem is the game becomes about that.
Yeah.
There's not really a good way to do it without that becoming a focus. And not everybody's going to want to focus on that necessarily. Now, if you do that in your session 0 and say, hey, you guys are going to be adventurers, but, you're also going to be, trying to foster this town, then you can at least make sure that the party's on board with that.
Right, and which is helpful.
Yeah.
I have 2 examples of it in games where I've run, in particular.
Okay.
One was Traviel, the game I'm publishing.
Yep.
And they built an outpost, a town called Firewing Outpost. And it was what Squiggly designed. And so it went fairly well, but it was hella complicated. And it caused a lot of paperwork headache. I will say that. And Squiggly knows this. He's like sitting there going, I don't want to ever do this again. kind of thing. The problem with that is... how do I want to put this? We have, in our evil game, a player who's now trying to create an empire. And that is going to be a lot more paperwork than people realize. Now, on the upside, a couple of people who want to be doing it are... How do I put this? They're taking it upon themselves to do the paperwork.
Good.
Which helps. But, yeah, the game has went from, hey, let's defend the dungeon against heroes that are going to be problematic, to, hey, let's build an empire.
Right.
So that statement you made is very accurate. When a couple of players, especially when they are very good at talking other players into the idea,
Yes.
they can definitely change and alter the course of a game.
Yes.
And that is both good and bad. Because sometimes the players will come up with a better idea than what you did.
Sure.
But there are times where, like, you talk about what you want to do in session 0, and then a couple of the players in the middle of, like, say, game 4 or 5 decide, hey, let's actually go this route instead.
Yes. And you know, basically at that point, you know, you have your communications options. It's like, hey, I you know, we discussed doing X. It looks like you guys have kind of shifted to do Y. Do we want to refocus the game on that? Is that where we're going with that? And just kind of get verbal confirmation. It's almost like re-session 0. It's like, are we all on board with changing the direction of the campaign, or is this something that we can have as maybe a backstory element? Are you, you know, if you're forging an empire, do you want it because you want to have a mechanical advantage that helps your characters, or is it just something you want in your character's backstory? Because, you know, maybe it doesn't have to be a focus. If you just want to say, yeah, my character's using his spare money to try and start setting this stuff up, great. We'll put that on the backstory and occasionally check in with it. But if you actually want it to mechanically interact with the rest of the game, then yeah, you're going to have to put some limits on it, because otherwise people can go nuts with that.
Oh yeah, we got one player who's building a spy network.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not terrible. Like, I can see that being done. Like, I had that happen in another game, which was very political in it, where the players are supposed to be, like, running kingdoms and shit.
Yeah.
And, in that game, one of the players created a information network that he referred to as his post office. I was like, okay, that's kind of neat.
I mean, I mentioned in one of our previous talks the Forgotten Realms game I was in, where the guy basically decided he was reclaiming his ancient dwarven lands and abused a deck of many things to try and get that keep and the leadership bonus. You know, he had been clear from the beginning that his dwarf's purpose was reclaiming his ancestors' lands. I just didn't think he'd be doing it in session 5.
Little early there, bud.
So that's great. Actually, I was just watching a DMing video earlier about giving the players what they want too soon or in too great a quantity can basically sabotage your game, because then what do? And in our case, it started turning into a colony management sim. And you know what? My character decided, okay, I can roll with that. And I basically had my character start trying to reforge the lost city of Mithranor, and was able to do so. Took me more than 5 sessions, but still. So we turned the game into a little bit more of, you know, colony management, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And that was fun, but I also would have enjoyed, you know, some more dungeon crawl and traditional adventuring stuff, which is what I thought we were going to do. But like I said, yeah,
Things
I dug
sometimes
it.
do change in the game.
Stupid mosquitoes.
But also, like, we gotta use, like, as a DM, one of our tools is definitely psychology. I would agree with that.
Absolutely.
Like, we have to know how to utilize how psychology works with people to get things done.
Yes.
And sometimes that can also be used to deal with problematic players, too.
It can.
If the DM has the cojones to kick a problematic player out.
It's more than just kicking a problematic player, hun, is what we're talking about. We're talking about like psychologically manipulating things to where it gets done easier. But also, at the same time, it can be abused. As we mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Easy abuses is forcing players to do things that they, one, may not want to do, two, may put them in an uncomfortable position.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen.
Oh, yes.
And also, at the same time, keep in mind this. When you're attempting to affect your players with psychology and tropes, the players are going to be doing the same to you.
Yes.
Sometimes they're better than you are.
And there's more of them than you.
Yes.
So that could be problematic. So you keep in mind what you're getting into. Do you think you can essentially outsmart your players in that instance?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not always just about like raw outsmarting them either. It's you can do a lot of it with prep. As long as you've got enough stuff prepped, you can kind of work around them. But yeah, the idea of being able to just outwit them when you need to, it's almost like you're playing poker in a way. You've got a bunch of people around the table. They've got tells. And you're trying to make sure they have an enjoyable experience, telling some semblance of the story that you've got planned. But yeah, it can be tricky to keep them on track. You don't want to go into railroading territory. You want to give them their freedom of choice. But yeah, especially with problem players, though, what I've done with problem players is usually, if I think it's innocent problematic behavior, I'm going to go straight at it and say, hey, I noticed X. Why are we doing that? That's causing an issue. Can we talk about that? Maybe find a different way to tackle it.
Right.
If I'm not sure if it's innocent, or if I suspect that it is not, then I may be kind of just more observant about that behavior. I may put out a situation in the game where I think it might, help me determine if it is, something innocent or not. But really, a lot of kinds of problematic players are gonna have just unmet needs. Like if you have a player who is I'll use the classic example, the barbarian who has to kick down every door before the party's ready to go into the next room.
Right.
That's a problematic player. But is it just that the player's bored? Is that what's going on? You can talk to the player. You can give them some other things to do. Find ways to keep them engaged so they don't, fuck up the party by triggering a bunch of encounters all at once like Leroy Jenkins.
Leroy Jenkins! Oh, God. It's like, oh, God, he ran in. Oh, excuse me while I hack up my lung there. Oh, Jesus. Everything's all moved around. Maybe it's not there. Yeah, there it is. Leroy Jenkins! There we go. And that's always fun too. It's also, keep in mind, your party's dynamical build. And when I say dynamical build, I'm talking about who is your party's talker?
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have to be the charisma character either. They could just be the talker of NPCs.
Right.
The talker, when I say the party's talker, I'm talking about the person at the table who tends to do the most talking, and it tends to be the leadership role.
Right. Who's essentially giving the others kind of their direction.
Yeah. Because usually in a party, there tends to be one person who does that.
Yep.
Then there tends to be the party's tactician. Doesn't always tend to be the leader, but sometimes, more often than not, it is. Know who they are. Know who, how do I put this? Know who, like, what kind of personalities each player has in the party.
Yep.
Because, okay. By knowing that information, you can utilize that to your effect.
Yep.
Because at that point, you're like, okay, how do I utilize this to get what I need? How do I convince, for example, the party leader to do what he needs to do?
Yeah, and yeah, if you've identified the leader, then you know who you have to convince first. Obviously, you want everybody to be on board, but if you convince the leader, you're halfway there.
Is that plug not working?
It's doing the. It's gonna take 3 hours to charge your friggin' phone thing.
Here, take that one.
This one?
From my headset, yes.
Okay.
All the cords are being stupid.
Is this one of the ones that came with the phones?
Think so?
No, that's for those. This is specifically for these.
Okay, it's fine.
Hopefully this works better than the other one.
Yeah, I don't know where the plugs for the dang phones are.
I just want to take a bath, and so.
Yeah. What's other fun things? Look who's the jokester of the party, too.
Dang.
That's always a good thing to know.
This is where I step in.
Because,
This will hurt.
the jokester of the party will also be able to convince sometimes people to do things.
Sure.
So there is that. And then of course we got, you know, problematic players. So like, for example, know who your, if anybody in your party is metagaming.
Yes.
If that tends to be a problem. Because then at that point you know who you have to pull some shit on.
Yes.
Because let's be brutally honest, metagaming is really bad, and it.
Well, I'll say this: I don't mind a certain level of at least minimal metagaming. If you're just like, oh, okay, my character would reasonably try fire on this thing when he sees it healing because cauterizing a wound makes sense. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, okay, that's perfectly reasonable that your character would try fire on this troll.
Right.
That's reasonable. Metagaming's not always terrible. Now, if they are using information from like other scenes that their character was not a participant in, then we've got a problem.
Yeah. And that's a big problem.
And again, it's often best to go head on at it and say, hey, your character doesn't know that. You weren't there. And he says, hypothetically, well, that's what I'm doing. Doesn't matter why. And then we have to have a more detailed talk. It's like, okay, so, this is called metagaming. This is why it's bad. I'm not expecting you to intentionally make the wrong choice, but let's not instantly make the right choice because you don't have the information to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, first try to get them to kind of buy in and work with you. And if that's not working, then you might have to do a head fake where you give them knowledge that they try to abuse and oops, turns out that wasn't the right knowledge.
Yep, it's an albino red dragon. Congratulations.
Yes.
It's not ice, it's fire.
Yes, it is indeed a white dragon, but that's its color, not its type.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's when you kind of have to do that. But honestly, I have heard it said that dealing with problem behavior with in-game consequences is seldom successful, and
Yeah.
if it doesn't work, then you probably have to look at like, hey, you can't continue playing with us if you're going to abuse that out of game knowledge. So let's make a choice. Do you want to keep gaming and try to not do that, or do you want to just find a game that suits you better?
Yeah.
I've never had to boot somebody for metagaming. I've never had anyone do it that bad.
I had one player that was that bad.
I think I have had.
a moment of respite.
There's a sort of related to the I know things from scenes my character wasn't in, but there is the my character's in every scene person. Usually this is innocent over eagerness, like they just want to be everywhere. They want to participate, they want to talk, they're excited, which is great. You know, engagement of the game is fantastic, but it also is spotlight hogging.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have a long-running or long-saved trick in my back pocket. If I ever have somebody who is particularly bad for that, if they're at two scenes where they could not have possibly been at both, then I will say, yes, they were at both scenes. One of them must be some kind of shapeshifter. And basically have the party dealing with a doppelganger. It's like, which one's the real one? So that, you know, isn't necessarily a punishment for the behavior, but a drawing a big red circle around it. Like, this is what you basically said, that you were in both of these places at the same time. So clearly, one of you was somebody else.
Yeah, one of these things is not like the other.
And
oh, man.
yeah, and usually, like I said, start straightforward. Like, hey, you're over at the hospital. You can't be here at the accountant's office too. And you know, if they're being reasonable about it, if they're just over eager, then they'll go, oh yeah, sorry. But if they start to push back immediately, like they're whining, like, but I want to do this, and you know, that's when you know maybe you've got yourself a spotlight hog on your hands.
Yeah, which can be problematic.
Yep.
Yes, indeedy. Alright, so we need to go...
I actually had a not entirely unrelated situation recently. Our mutual friend Matt,
right.
It wasn't a question of like trying to be in multiple scenes, but the party was getting some information, or they're talking to an NPC, and in the course of that conversation, some information about one of the other PCs was revealed, like a backstory element. And Matt specifically spoke up and said that his character didn't notice that, and then later on tried to question a single member of the party for some one-on-one RP about it, like, what? When did we learn this? Like, okay, dude, I see what you did there. But you're intentionally ignoring information your character reasonably would have acquired to try and score some one-on-one RP. I understand that you want a little more spotlight time, but it really feels like you're just kind of sleight of handing it away from the rest of the party. And so I called him out on it. He acknowledged that you know, it could be read that way, and so we basically said we'd drop it for now and, you know, not worry about it too much. But
and he's probably done better since then, because I know Matt,
yeah.
Once you bring something up to him, he usually corrects the behavior real quick.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't like even a threaten to throw anybody out. It was just like, hey, I see what you're doing, but we were, you know, trying to get through this part quickly. You are specifically slowing it down because you wanted the spotlight RP. I understand you want the spotlight, but come on, man, we're trying to get to the end of this so everybody can go home for the night.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, it is the 9 o'clock time.
On.
What was that?
I said right on.
Right on. Tomorrow, by the way, people, we're going to be playing, I believe, more Dragon Age. Nobody's requested a different game yet. So, there is that. We're going to be rating someone called Artemis Harpy.
I think you've rated them before. The name,
Yeah.
the handle sounds familiar.
Yeah, I've rated them before back when I was on Wildcard Wednesday playing Dragon Age.
Ah,
So
gotcha.
this is a Tuesday. We're going to be doing this on for the first time. If you're a follower, please use the following message. If you are a subscriber, please by all means use the following message. Please make sure that you are taking care of yourselves, both mentally and physically. That's important. And tomorrow, like I said, we'll be playing Dragon Age at 7, going to about 9:30-ish, around that time. What else? Anything I need else to say? I think that's it, for the most part. So let's go raid Art. Can I type today would be nice. Artemis Harpy. Alright, so we're going to raid. Let's show this person some love and help them with Dragon Age, hopefully, if they have backseating allowed. I don't know. Let me double check. No, they don't have the tag that says backseating allowed or disallowed, so... Alright, we can give them some lore stuff if they ever wanted it. So, I will catch you guys all tomorrow, alright? Doodles.
Catch you later.